Is it your first time? Fantastic. Wonderful. Are you enjoying it? Great. Great. So my name is Dr. Debra Shapiro. I am a board-certified OBGYN. I'm also a private health coach. I try to help people get off medications, reverse their chronic disease, and really learn to thrive on a plant-based diet, eating mostly whole, unprocessed plant foods. And when I was asked to give this talk on women's health issues, it really made me think about why I went into obstetrics and gynecology in the first place. And I have to say, I think it was really because I grew up in the shadow of my mother's very ill health. She struggled her whole life with diabetes, taking multiple shots of insulin a day, and was never well, and almost afraid to leave the house. And she died at age 55 of a brain tumor. I was 15, so I really saw our whole family sort of go into this tailspin. And I think because of that, I thought about how important, can we go on to the next slide? How important mothers were for setting the health tone for the family. Fathers are important too, and fathers can be mothers, men can be mothers, but I was really thinking that mothers do get to make the decision about breastfeeding and for how long, and they make decisions often about what to feed their young children. You can pick up a slide set on the chair if you'd like one, at least in most heterosexual lesbian households. And I think the habits that we form around food early on really can set us up for what we enjoy later on, like how we think about food. Slide sets are over there if you'd like them. Can we go to the next? And maternal health certainly affects child's health and the community's health. Yeah, it's fine. Was there one before that? Yeah, this is what we're going to be talking about. This is the next one. So, okay. So, I'm sorry, everyone's settled. So, today, I dedicate this talk to everyone who is a mother, who has a mother, or who had a mother, or who wants to be a mother. And in the spirit of inclusivity, men can be mothers too. So today, if we have time, I'd like to talk about three topics: breast cancer, and how to prevent breast cancer, and especially really deal with this soy versus dairy issue and put it to rest finally. And then heart disease, which is our number one killer. In fact, if you have breast cancer, you're still more likely to die of heart disease. And that it's not only preventable, but actually reversible through diet and lifestyle changes. And then this topic of epigenetics. Anyone heard this word, epigenetics? Epigenetics, how your genes are not your destiny. And we'll talk about that, and how your decisions and how you change your genes while you're living with your diet and lifestyle can actually be transmitted to the next generation and the generation after. Can we go to the next? Okay, breast cancer. The most common cancer in women after skin cancer. There are 40,000 women dying annually from breast cancer in this country, and 4 million women in the United States have breast cancer. And we can go on. So because this was Breast Cancer Awareness Month, October, the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine, your lifetime risk is 1 in 8, 12.5%. But that's your lifetime. It's not like you can look around and see 8 women and say one of you is going to get breast cancer. It is over your lifetime. We can go to the next. Thank you. So the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine has been now talking about ways that we can reduce our risk of breast cancer. There are 4 lifestyle factors that would really help you to reduce your lifetime risk. The first is to eat a plant. I'll give you to go to the end, but eat a plant-based diet, maintain a healthy weight, exercise, and limit your alcohol. But we'll be talking about all of these in a little more detail. So eat a plant-based diet. So this is a diet centered around whole, unprocessed, mostly unrefined plant foods. So fruits, vegetables, whole grains, legumes, nuts and seeds, and spices, because they're full of antioxidants, phytonutrients, and fiber. So when we talk about just a vegan diet, a lot of times people are vegan for the environment, or they're vegan for animals, but they might not be eating really a whole plant food diet. And you can live on, a lot of college kids do this, it's just like Coke and chips and Oreos, and there are even some Girl Scout cookies that are vegan, but that's not going to give you ultimate health. But the best way to affect your genes and the best way to reduce your risk of chronic disease is to center your diet around more whole plant foods the way they come out. But it's better to grind them. So keep them, once they're ground, they should be probably kept in the refrigerator or freezer. They contain a kind of fiber called lignans, and that actually lowers estrogen levels. It's good to reduce prostate cancer and also breast cancer. And Dr. Greger, if you know about his daily dozen, he says a tablespoon of flax every day, and you should have that. And then cruciferous vegetables. So cruciferous vegetables, especially like kale and cauliflower and collard greens, I think, and Brussels sprouts, these have an antioxidant in them called sulforaphane. sulforaphane is in them, but it has to be created with an enzymatic action of an enzyme called myrosinase. So what the vegetable actually has in it is a precursor called a glucosinolate. And when glucosinolates get broken up in the plant, then they get exposed to myrosinase and they turn into sulforaphane. But that actually takes 45 minutes. So this is really interesting. If you want more sulforaphane, eat your vegetables raw. I love this. I get broccoli or broccolini, perfectly good raw. And if you get broccoli sprouts, they have 100 times more sulforaphane. But if you don't digest raw things very well and you're cooking stuff, if you just took your kale and dumped it in your Instant Pot and put it on, high power, 0 minutes, and let the steam escape with it, you would have kale, but you would not have sulforaphane because you need the myrosinase. It's like those glow sticks. We have to break it open. Very much like that. You have to break the cells open and expose the glucosinolate to the myrosinase, because the myrosinase, this enzyme, is killed by heat. But what you can do if you don't like to whack and wait or hack and hold or chop and chill for 45 minutes, is you can put a tiny pinch of mustard powder on your greens. So if you cook, and the same with already cooked food like frozen broccoli. Because frozen broccoli, the way how it stays green is because they flash cook it. So they destroy the myrosinase. So when you're eating broccoli, and it's got fiber, but it's not going to have the sulforaphane that you really want. So does that make sense? So you can use a pinch if you can eat it raw, but if you have to cook it, either chop it ahead and let it sit for 45 minutes, or add a pinch of mustard powder. Because mustard seeds are also a cruciferous vegetable, and they have myrosinase. So you add a pinch of the myrosinase, and boop, you got sulforaphane. Next. What else? What other foods? And it's not an extensive list. Obviously, garlic for cancer, garlic, onions, the allium family, fantastic. And blueberries, no question about it. Blueberries, you should always be having blueberries. And the wild blueberries, frozen blueberries, are fabulous. But there's some others like mushrooms. Cancer fighting, if it's cooked, it has a little bit of a class or group 3 carcinogen when mushrooms are eaten raw. It's called agarotine. So I would not. I know they're on every salad bar. I don't take them raw. I just eat them cooked. And even drying mushrooms doesn't completely get rid of the agarotine. Green tea is an antioxidant. It should be your preferred beverage. If you have high blood pressure, then you should be drinking hibiscus tea, because that lowers your blood pressure a little bit. And turmeric. Turmeric, incredible. Have you ever seen it in this form? You can buy it in the grocery store. It's very cheap. You keep it in the freezer. You cut it from a little piece and put it in your blender and you're making a smoothie. Turmeric is also great for wounds. You can make a paste of turmeric powder and put it on a burn or put it on a wound, and it just eats the infection away. I almost had a cat bite. It was incredible. So turmeric, anti-inflammatory, antioxidant, and also anti-tumoral effects. In fact, I was just reading that cancer researchers are looking for ways to put the curcumin, which is the active phytonutrient from turmeric, into chemotherapy regimens. Next, please. Okay. Breast cancer prevention number 2, so eat a plant-based diet, maintain a healthy weight, because fat cells produce estrogen and that fuels breast cancer. In fact, there are other cancers that are also related to being obese. So it's never a good idea. And having a BMI or body mass index, and you know how to get your body mass index? Everyone know how to do that? Okay. And there also, you can just look up BMI tables online and you can figure out, but you want to keep it between 18.5 and 24.9. And if anyone's thinking about getting pregnant, your fertility will be maximized between a BMI of 20 to 22, so there's a smaller range. So you really want to be on the slimmer side. And in the Adventist 2 study where they looked at everybody's diets, they had meat eaters and they had semi-vegetarians, they had vegetarians and vegans. The only group, in this group of people from the Seventh-day Adventists in Loma Linda, California, the only group that had a normal BMI were the vegans. Even the vegetarians were above 25. Okay, next. Am I speaking too fast? A little bit. All right. Thank you. And you can always just raise your hand too if I'm speaking too fast, because sometimes that happens. All right. Moderate daily exercise, and about 45 to 60 minutes a day would be really good if you can. If you can't, just start where you are. I mean, if you can walk down the block, walk down the block. But sort of work yourself up, and it would be really good. Not only that, but you know that physical exercise improves your immune function, but if you can do more aerobic exercise and actually get your heartbeat up, it's good to reduce your risk of Alzheimer's, and it's great for cardiovascular disease as well. Next. And the last, I hate to say this, alcohol. It's a group 1 carcinogen, and even 1 drink a day is not good for breast cancer It increases your risk of breast cancer. So I would try to keep it to less than a drink a day. And the only alcoholic drink that might have some benefit from the resveratrol is going to be red wine. So white wine is sort of useless, and you just get the alcohol. But still, if you've had breast cancer, I just wouldn't drink. I mean, why? I don't get it. People are still doing dairy and they're still drinking. I don't really understand it. So keep it to a minimum. Next. All right. Now let's talk about soy and dairy. How many people, this I can't wait to see, how many people have actually heard that soy causes cancer? It's funny. How many people have heard that if you have had breast cancer, you can't have soy? How many people heard this from a clinician? Wow. Anybody over here heard from a clinician? No, so your friends are telling you. You heard it from a clinician. Okay. The opposite is true. Soy prevents breast cancer in incredible ways. So it reduces your risk at least by 30%. And if you give soy, whole soy foods, to children between the ages of 5 and 9, you can reduce their lifetime risk by up to 60%. And the men who eat more soy, or drink more soy milk, and the Adventist 2 Health Study also had a 70% reduction in prostate cancer. So this is not trivial. This is huge, people. So I put up this Eden brand. Have you anyone seen Eden brand? Yeah, what's great about it is it's non-BPA, and BPA is an endocrine disruptor. And they also cook their beans with a little bit of kombu. Anyone use kombu? So it's great. So you put it with your beans. It helps get the flatulence out, and also it gives you some iodine. Kombu has too fast.
Oh, I had a question for you.
Okay, kombu has it actually has a lot of iodine. You know, all the different sea vegetables, you need iodine, 150 micrograms a day and 220 micrograms a day if you're pregnant. But definitely if you're going to try to be pregnant, make sure that you have an iodine source that's reliable. So 3/4 of a teaspoon of iodized salt. This is very important for your thyroid. But you can use sea vegetables, but they all have varying amounts. So like a sheet of nori might be decent, but for kelp, way too much iodine. So you just need a spray of kelp, like kelp granules. You just need a little bit. And kombu is one that's also quite high. But wakame and harame, they're fine. Okay. So they cook their beans with some wakame, so it has some iodine. Then there's tofu and tempeh, which is a living food, which is fabulous, and edamame and soy milk. And you can buy soy milk even from Trader Joe's that's just organic soybeans and water. Sometimes when you buy, yeah?
Is tofu and soy the same thing?
Tofu is a soy product. It's made from soybeans. They cook them, they mash them, and they put them through some sort of sack.
If someone said don't eat tofu if you have breast cancer.
They're wrong.
And what about
wrong.
soy?
I'm going to tell you, let's go to the next, because yes, absolutely. Yes. Dairy is really not. And I know ACOG says 3 milk products a day. It's absolutely not true. There was one study, the Women's Health Initiative study, or the Nurses' Health Study. There's a book called The Fertility Diet by Walter Willett. Did you read it?
I heard it starts with an egg, and they refer to that and
Okay. Yes. So I read it, and so he still says you can have 1 glass of milk if you're trying to get pregnant, but you don't have to. And I don't know why you would, but let's talk about it, okay? So moving on. Okay, 30% lower risk of breast cancer if you eat more soy. Increasing soy in young girls can reduce the lifetime risk up to 60%. And eating soy after diagnosis helps prevent recurrence and decreases mortality. And this is absolutely understood by the medical profession, or at least by the bodies, of the larger bodies. It hasn't trickled down to providers yet, but it is true. So let's talk about why, because it's fascinating. Next.
I'm sorry, what's the study called where that comes from? Where's that data come from?
There's lots of studies.
Okay.
So if you want to look up, there's a whole review by Mark Messina,
Okay.
Messina, a whole review, and he has all the literature in there. It's great. He actually spoke at the last International Plant-Based Nutrition Healthcare Conference, and he was fabulous. Mark Messina, a whole review on soy. Okay, so isoflavones, which are the phytonutrients in soy, and this is what people are so afraid of because they kind of look like estrogen, but they actually sit in something called the beta receptor. So we have 2 kinds of estrogen receptors in the breast. We have alpha receptors and beta receptors. They hadn't even found the beta receptor until a couple years after I finished medical school. But we now know that beta receptors they suppress growth, and they kind of block the effect. So they act like a selective estrogen receptor modulator. Have you heard of selective? So these are SERMs, like tamoxifen. So when people are young and they have a high risk of developing breast cancer later on, sometimes they suggest that you be on raloxifene to lower your risk of breast cancer. Well, actually, isoflavones in soy actually do that. So they sit in the beta receptors and they block the growth-promoting effects of estrogen. Isoflavones in soy also upregulate the expression of the BRCA gene. For the BRCA gene is the gene that helps with DNA repair. And when people have defects in that gene, they're BRCA carriers of a defect, then they can't repair the DNA as well. But isoflavones in soy actually upregulates and makes it work better. Okay, so you're going to have and lastly, isoflavones in soy actually act as aromatase inhibitors. Has anyone heard of aromatase inhibitors? Aromatase inhibitors are drugs like Arimidex. These are drugs that they give women with breast cancer to help prevent a recurrence. Isoflavones do the same thing. They block this aromatase, which takes androgens and makes them into estrogens. Okay, so three very important ways. It acts like it sits in the beta receptor, suppresses growth, is an aromatase inhibitor, upregulates the BRCA gene that helps to repair DNA. So it absolutely reduces your risk of breast cancer and reduces your risk of a recurrence if you have breast cancer. 2 soy products a day. You don't have to eat 10 soy products a day. You can just have 2 soy products a day. Anyone mind somebody's way? Because you could also just... Okay. You have a question?
I'm still not sure the difference between soy and tofu.
Okay. Tofu is a product made from soy. It is minimally processed. So soybeans or a bean, you can buy soybeans raw and cook them, soak them and cook them. Tofu is made from soybeans.
So it's the same thing as soy?
Like peanut and peanut butter.
Yeah.
It's
minimally processed.
The same thing?
Basically, yes.
Why are they different?
Because it's minimally processed. It's not the same thing. I mean, you look at it, it's not the same thing.
Now, why do you mean minimal? How's the process?
So you'd have to talk to someone who actually makes tofu. Has anyone made tofu? I think you can. How do you make tofu?
You soak the beans first, then you blend them up in a blender so you have milk. Strain all of the pulp out, cook milk a bit more, put it into a press, and then,
Yeah, that's all it is. It's cooked, it's mashed, it's pressed.
There's nothing added?
No. Actually, it's interesting. If you buy the tofu in water, in those packs, they actually put a little bit of calcium in this. It has even more calcium in it, so it's great for your bones. Okay, moving on. And more questions we should probably keep to the end, and also I will be outside, because I have about 30 or 40 minutes. What about dairy? So let's decide if dairy is healthy. For a human, dairy is definitely healthy for a baby calf. But even they stop drinking it when they grow, okay? So milk contains biologically active female hormones. We've genetically modified our cattle now so that they can be milked while they're pregnant. So every year, yes. So when you're pregnant, you don't lactate normally. I mean, sometimes when people have kids in quick succession, they do. But normally we don't lactate until after we give birth. But they genetically modified the cattle so that they can lactate the whole time. So you can imagine very high levels of estrogen and progesterone and other hormones that make it into the milk. And then that gets concentrated in products like cheese and yogurt. And these are biologically active female hormones, and they fit in the alpha receptors. Remember there are 2 types of receptors in the breast? Soy fits in the
beta.
And what does that do?
Protect.
So it blocks the effects of estrogen. But dairy estrogen sits in the alpha receptors and definitely increases your risk of breast cancer and prostate cancer. The estrogen and progesterone in the milk is concentrated in cheese, and high-fat dairy intake is also associated with this greater risk of cancer. Go on to the next. What else is wrong with cow's milk? Okay, animal protein. So now we're not talking about the hormones for a second. We're going a little bit off to just animal protein in general. Animal protein increases IGF-1. It contains IGF-1, insulin-like growth factor 1. It also stimulates it in us. We make our own. When you're young, you have enough, you grow. They actually find that vegan kids grow an inch taller than kids that are eating cakes. Sorry. One day that won't be true.
Non-regular.
But IGF-1 promotes growth, promotes tumor growth. You can't really have a tumor growing without IGF-1, and also insulin. And it also stimulates something called mTOR. Has anyone heard of mTOR? You have to really be reading Gregor's work to know about mTOR. It's the target of rapamycin. It's the enzyme of aging. You don't want that. You don't want a lot of that. You don't want anything that would stimulate it. And animal protein stimulates it. Animal protein, fish, meat, dairy, cheese, all of that. Eggs stimulates mTOR and IGF-1. So cheese has saturated fat and cholesterol. Breast cancer cells, you hijack the cholesterol from dairy and use it to make more, to upregulate and make more cancer cells. You know, cholesterol is in the cell walls. Cow's milk also, this is pretty disgusting. Almost all the cattle in this country are contaminated with bovine leukemia virus that might be responsible for up to 37% of human breast cancer. On to the next. Now this is a new one I just learned from PCRM. I had never really heard of it. 5-alpha-P or 5-alpha-pregnanedione. This is another hormone. It actually is a precursor of something called dihydrotestosterone, DHT, which causes acne, and prostate, it's associated with prostate cancer also. And what 5-alpha-P does, and this is in milk, it induces estrogen receptors in the breast cancer cells and makes them more sensitive to estrogen. So can you imagine you have somebody who had breast cancer and they tell you, I can't have soy, and they're having cheese and dairy and they're drinking alcohol, my head explodes. But I can't say anything because the doctor told them that.
Right.
Next. All right, now we're on to something new. Should we go on, or should we battle this some more?
No.
On to something new. Okay, next. Okay, what are women really going to die of? So the number one killer of women and men, all around the world actually, is heart disease. Number one killer. Even if you have breast cancer, I said it before, it stands to be repeated. Even if you have breast cancer, you're more likely to die of heart disease. But we know now that it is preventable and it is reversible. Actually, so cancer, they say, is 40 to 70%. All cancers are related to diet and lifestyle. 40 to 70% of them are related to diet and lifestyle. With heart disease, it's 80 to 90%. And with diabetes, type 2 diabetes, 90% of type 2 diabetes is because of diet and lifestyle. This is horrendous. And my mother was a victim of this. And we ate meat and dairy at every meal, and she could never deal with her. It was terrible. And now we know better. It's shown to be reversible. I was just reading about FDR. So FDR had heart disease, cardiovascular disease, Roosevelt, and this was back in the 30s, and he had higher and higher blood pressure, just getting higher and higher, and they just noticed it. And everyone just thought it was a normal response to aging. And it was a time when nobody knew that it was related to diet and lifestyle. So we can go to the next. So there's a mountain of evidence. Can we do the next? Oh, okay, let's do this one first. This is right. Okay, how does it happen? I don't know if anyone's ever seen this before, but this is schematic of a blood vessel. Let's just say that this is the widowmaker. This is the left anterior descending part. This is a blood vessel that's going to the left ventricle of the heart. So what's lining all of your blood vessels, all of your arteries, is this single cell layer called the endothelium. You can think of it as super smooth linoleum. And when it's super smooth and it's not irritated by anything, by salt, sugar, and oils, and chemicals from the atmosphere, it's very smooth, and all the blood and nutrients can flow without any trouble just through the blood vessels, bringing oxygen to all the muscles. But when it gets irritated, then LDL cholesterol and saturated fat can get deposited under the lining. And I can tell you later how it gets deposited under, but let's just say it gets concentrated there, makes this plaque. There can be some very stable plaques. There are people who have, you hear someone had a little chest pain, they go in and they have like 5-vessel disease, but not every one of those is going to blow. They can be very stable plaques, and you can actually develop other blood vessels around. Doesn't mean you're going to have a heart attack, but it does mean that there's narrow blood vessels. But some plaques are these very inflamed plaques. The LDL cholesterol gets eaten up by the macrophages, gets made into these foam cells filled with inflammatory kind of chemicals, and along comes a crystal of LDL cholesterol. If you ever looked at the crystallized form of LDL cholesterol, and it pierces, they've seen pictures of it, it pierces the delicate cap on this plaque, opening it, spilling all of its contents out, causes a clotting cascade, and then everything past that, distal to that blood vessel gets no more oxygen, and that's called, this is the widowmaker, right? Okay, next, so there is a mountain of evidence that shows that this is preventable and reversible now, okay? We knew from about 1950s, and if you look just on PubMed, you just look actually just plant-based diets in cardiovascular disease, 819 studies. But go on to the next. So it's not just a normal result of aging, okay? Because we know that from early studies, one that was fascinating about World War II in Norway, they noticed that when the Nazis came and took all the meat, I don't know why they were studying this, they had the time, but they were, and heart disease rates plummeted. And then when the war was over and the meat was returned, went right back up. And also, there was a doctor in Africa who was noticing, he's the father of fiber, I'll give it in a second, and he noticed that there was no heart, not only was there no heart disease, but there was no colon cancer in sub-Saharan Africa. There have been studies of rural China and Italy, the 7 countries Ansel Keys was studying in the Mediterranean diet, and then we had early cohort studies. You may have heard about the Framingham Study, and there's the Nurses' Health Study, and the Health Professionals Follow-Up Studies, and the big cohort studies that are still going on. Early pioneers. Anyone know about Nathan Pritikin? So Pritikin, I used to think he was a doctor. He wasn't a doctor. He was an engineer, and he had heart disease, and he reversed his heart disease with a plant-based diet. He went on and opened these centers, and that was actually what caused Dr. Greger to start his work, because his own grandmother was one of Nathan Pritikin's death's door people. They were sent home to die because they had used every blood vessel and they couldn't do anything more for him. And she lived another 30-something years, 33 years. And of course we have large population studies like the Epic Oxford study, the Adventist II study, Adventist Health study, and there's some that are ongoing. And these metabolic ward experiments, this is interesting because people always say, I don't know what cholesterol does. I don't know what blah, blah, blah. They always say that. There have been hundreds of metabolic ward studies where you take people and you put them in a room, a hospital room or a hotel, and you feed them certain food and you check their blood levels, and we know exactly, in terms of cholesterol, there is an equation called the Hegstate equation that absolutely tells you when you eat a certain amount of saturated fat, what will happen to your LDL cholesterol. It's not a mystery. People have, well, it was, but it isn't. All right, next. So then we have the randomized controlled studies. Dean Ornish will go into that in a little more detail, and prospective clinical studies that didn't have, he used his own patients as their own controls, and I'll explain that later. So going on, there's been so much data that Kim Williams, who's a past president of the American College of Cardiology, anyone get to hear him? He's so wonderful. And he said there are 2 kinds of cardiologists, vegans and those who haven't read the literature. Yeah. Okay, Dr. Ornish. So his study was published in the Lancet magazine journal in 1990. He was doing this as a medical student. Isn't it amazing? As a medical student. Really incredible guy. And he's still working today. He's working to reverse early stage Alzheimer's. But before that, he reversed early stage prostate cancer, which we'll talk about in the 3rd section. But here, this was his first work. He was reversing our #1 killer. He had then he went and randomized to two diets. One, these are people who were, they had demonstrable narrowing of their blood vessels. They had to agree to have angiograms all during the study. Big deal. So he put them on a low-fat, at the time it was a vegetarian diet. He actually allowed some non-fat dairy. Moderate aerobic exercise, stress reduction, he's always talked about that. Yoga, meditation. He advised people how to stop smoking. They had group support, and they were followed for more than 5 years. Okay, let's see what happened. Also, he has a book called The Spectrum that came out after this, because what he showed was that the people who were most adherent to the program had the most results. And it might not seem like much, like only a certain small percentage of changes in the diameter, but the blood, I'm not really a physics person, but the blood flow through a tube is related to the 4th power of the diameter. So even a small change makes a big difference to flow. So even the people who were least adherent, it didn't get worse. And let's look at the next one. So this is really interesting. What happens? What's the natural history of heart disease? It gets worse. So look at the people who are just told to do what their doctors, I'm so embarrassed, I'm a doctor, do what your doctor says. It just got worse, right? That's the black, it just got worse. More stenosis. And the people in his group got better and better. And that's after 1 year and 5 years. And I think about that even with what's going on in politics today. If you have a heart attack and they fix one thing, you still have heart disease. Unless you change your diet and lifestyle, you still have heart disease. Yay. Okay, and then Dr. Esselstyn, working at the Cleveland Clinic. So he was a breast cancer surgeon, but he turned his attention to reversing heart disease. And it's amazing. So his diet was very strict. Has anyone ever heard him speak? No oil! His really booming voice. But he's terrific because he says that heart disease is a toothless paper tiger that need never exist. And when it does exist, it need never progress. So he took a bunch of people who were told they were going to die in a year. They had a year to live. Very severe heart disease. And they came to him and he used them as their own controls because they had so many prior cardiac events. And then he put them on this very strict diet. Fruits, vegetables, whole grains, and legumes, as much as they wanted. No oil. And initially, no nuts or seeds. So very low fat. And this is what he was able to get. A really blocked artery, and after 32 weeks, a completely open artery.
What's that doctor's name?
Esselstyn. Yeah, so he's at the Cleveland Clinic. He's fantastic. He and T. Colin Campbell, they both grew up on dairy farms. Very interesting backgrounds. They both really are pioneers and fantastic men. Really lovely. So, and none of his people who did his diet had any more events. That's the thing. None of them had any. And one person strayed and had a little something and had an event and came right back.
What about those keto diet that we eat only fat?
Yeah, they're terrible.
Oh, it's terrible.
Yeah, it takes years off your life.
That's about the same as the paleo diet, right?
I don't even know what that is. Paleo, what?
Paleo, it's similar.
Paleo, yeah, no, it's even more strict. Paleo has keto has even more fat, and usually, it's very high fat. But no, there are studies on it. No long-term studies, but the studies that we do have that it takes about 6 years off your life. So you can live 12 years longer on a plant-based diet, or you can live 6 years shorter on a keto diet. It's your choice. But people who love keto are very adamant that this is
Yeah, they're into their weight. They're not into their
You
health.
can have short-term weight loss, but you're sacrificing everything. You're sacrificing everything. There are ways to lose weight, and you can starve, you can have cancer. There are lots of ways to lose weight. Okay, not visiting again. Hey, where did you get your protein? This is great because I want people to know. A lot of people, until that movie, The Game Changers, came out. Anyone see The Game Changers?
Yes.
So now, if you haven't seen it, it's on. You can watch it on Netflix. Please see it. But in the past, people had this idea that vegans were wimpy, right? Everyone thought that. I mean, if you get into a discussion with a man about, that I'm a vegan, you'd never think of a hunky guy as a vegan, right? Never. So here's this lion talking to this rhinoceros, and he just eats plants, and he says, "Where do you get your protein?" And not this idiot again.
How do we get a copy of that?
It's on the flyer.
It's
on there.
I didn't get it yet.
Oh, good, it's right over there. We have them. Okay. I've looked up vegan
Well, I'd
cartoons.
like to get an electronic copy
Yeah.
and just send it
So
out there.
vegan cartoons.
Yeah.
Look up vegan cartoons. And then don't tell anyone because I'm not sure I got permission. Go to the next. All right, now we're on part 3. I think we still have time. So genetics, epigenetics. Does anyone? So who knows the word epigenetics? Oh wow, that's cool. We'll talk about epigenetics. So do you remember? So epigenetics is the idea that everything that's about us that makes us who we are is not coded initially just in our DNA. Because we all, so what I was taught in high school, what you were probably taught, is Mendelian genetics. This guy Mendel, he was a monk, he was playing with pea plants and experimenting, getting different colors of pea plants. It's all very cool, and that's what we learned. We learned that you get one set of chromosomes, you have 23 sets of chromosomes, you get one set from one parent, one set from the other parent. And this works perfectly with something like blood type. You get blood type A from your one parent, you get blood type B from another parent, and you put them together, and you're AB. There's no question. There's no amount of tobacco smoke that you could be exposed to that's going to change your blood type, right? That's set. But it turns out that there are thousands, probably hundreds of thousands of other genes that are not that simple. It's not like that. Because you can take, you can look at people with the exact same genetic makeup. You take identical twins, and who are raised in different kinds of environments, and very different things happen to them, right? Because it's not all about this. And another way to think about this is about gene expression, is that every cell in your body, every cell that has a nucleus, every nucleated cell, has the same chromosomes. They all have the same chromosomes, but they all do very different things. And I like this example. Wait till you hear. So you have saliva in your mouth, so the cells in your salivary gland make saliva. And then you have cells in your stomach that make hydrochloric acid. So what, that means they can all do that. So what if the cells in your salivary gland started making hydrochloric acid instead? What if the gene for hydrochloric acid got turned on in your salivary gland? You kiss someone and their lips would dissolve. So this would not be very good. So this all has to be very tightly regulated. What gets expressed in what cell at what time? And it's malleable, it's changeable by our lifestyle. And this is very new. We just found out about this whole epigenetics in like the 90s. This is very new. So gene expression, we'll go back one second. So it really has to do with gene expression, and that is dependent on, you have to think about your chromosomes, your DNA, your beautiful double helix, but actually on a very microscopic level, you have these larger molecules called histones, and the DNA is wrapped around the histones, and when it's wrapped tightly, it can't be read, and when it gets unwrapped, then it can be read, and what determines that is we add a methyl group. So it's the methylation and histone modification. That's how things get expressed and suppressed. Okay.
Does it involve mitochondria as well?
No, the mitochondria I think has its own DNA.
Okay. I mean, there's no interplay.
Does that happen? Not that I'm aware of, but it's a new science, and there probably is something about it, so I don't know. No, I'm just talking about what I know, which is in the rate, not mitochondrial DNA. But I don't know it. Mitochondrial DNA might also be subject to epigenetics. I just haven't seen anything specifically about.
Or I'm thinking there might be some factors in the mitochondria that actually can affect the.
Oh, are mitochondria involved in actually doing any of the methylation? I don't know. If you're interested, you should go look. There's lots of stuff about this now. It's very interesting. All right, go to the next. So, Dr. Ornish, so this is how epigenetics works. I don't know, has anyone read about this study where he reversed prostate cancer? It's amazing. So he took men with early stage prostate cancer. Anyone knows about prostate cancer, it actually can be sort of dormant for a long, long time. People usually say that you're going to die with your prostate cancer, not of your prostate cancer, right? So a lot of men who have early stage prostate cancer, they're just watching their PSA, the prostate-specific antigen, and they're just watching weight. They don't need a prostatectomy, they don't need radiation. So he had these men who have early stage prostate cancer, and he randomizes them. One group, do what your doctor says, very dangerous group, and the other group, wouldn't want to get the V on that group, and then the other group is his group, and he has, again, so now he's on a vegan diet. It's a low-fat, 11% fat vegan diet, moderate exercise, and it's not running marathons, it's 30 minutes of exercise 6 days a week. That's all, 30 minutes of like brisk walking. Stress reduction, he always does, and a support group. And what he saw was that after a year, the PSA group dropped, but more than that, he had these pictures of the tumor shrinking. Tumors shrinking with diet and lifestyle. We'll talk about how that happened in a second. And that was after a year, but what's amazing is that even after 3 months, they do this thing that's like a heat map. You should look at these. I didn't put them up because I thought they were a little complicated to look at, but they're actually to see that methylation. So what they found was that what he found was over 500 genes changed expression after just 3 months. So 450 genes that promote cancer were downregulated, and 48 genes that protect against cancer were upregulated, like tumor suppressor genes, and those like the RAS oncogene. So yes, I used to think, you have the cancer gene, it's going to get turned on. I didn't know what made that not happen or happen. Just thought it was destiny, right? It's not destiny. You can change that. And it wasn't like they were 5 years old. These were older men, and they were still changing their destiny. Their tumors were shrinking. Okay. And you know why? Because you get rid of... You can't make something grow without IGF. Okay, so next, this is also incredible. So because this is... Let's go to the next one. The next one. Okay, how could this possibly affect your children or your grandchildren? Think about this, because it is pretty cool. Do you know that when women are pregnant and they're exposed to tobacco smoke, that the boy children are more likely to get prostate cancer, to get testicular cancer? Did you know that? Probably do epigenetics. So that's, and maybe even their children might also. So here, project I took, this is really amazing. There are a lot of studies about epigenetics using rodents, which really is horrendous. And especially when they're studying stress, like they take a mouse and they kind of restrain it, it's pregnant. So I don't want to talk about any of that. But this was just something that happened in nature. There was an incredible ice storm in 1998 in Quebec. Did anyone remember that? I don't remember it at all. What? An ice storm in Quebec in 1998. Tremendous stress. Minus 20 degrees. People lost power for 40 days. And the people were stranded on streetcars. I mean, a tremendous amount of social stress. And researchers decided, good time to follow the offspring of women who were pregnant during that terrible, stressful time. And they found remarkable things. And they're still studying them. It's been 19 years. They're still studying them. We have some data up to the kids are not now 19, or they were 19 the last time I saw it. So what they found was more autism, more autoimmune disease, and more metabolic disease. And when women were experiencing more subjective and objective stress. And again, looking at heat maps, let's do the next one. When there was more objective stress, they actually found that hundreds of genes changed expression. And these were genes that coded for things like glucocorticoids and also T cells. So you can imagine that the offspring was going to have a very different response to stress their entire life. And also their immune function was altered. And when they check them, it's one thing, like maybe it just affects them for the first 6 months of life, but they've been checking them ongoing, and these changes have remained. So then you kind of think, what about when you have a baby grow, I am an obstetrician, so when you have a baby growing inside of you, inside of that fetus are germ cells, right? The early testes and the early ovaries. So are these epigenetic changes affecting the future offspring of the baby that's growing inside of you? And I think yes. You think yes. So they found the altered expression was unchanged even after many years. And I think that might be it. Take-home messages are?
Eat more plants.
Go on, you are not in test. Center your diet around whole plant foods. So being vegan is great. Don't buy leather, don't buy fur. I just saw a video yesterday about a fur farm, but just don't do it. But don't just eat vegan. Eat a whole plant food diet, or as much as possible. Limit the extra oils, limit the excessive fat. Don't eat fried food. Do you ever watch do you ever hear the 2,000-year-old man? He's an old, old cartoon. But the 2,000-year-old, so the idea was that this 2,000-year-old man came back to Earth. And they asked him, what's the secret? You're here, you're 2,000 years old. What was your secret? He says, never, ever, ever, ever touch fried food. That was back in the 60s, so don't eat fried food. So get regular exercise. And you know what's interesting about exercise is you can eat that keto diet, it negates all the benefits of exercise. If you eat a high-fat diet, so this whole thing about I can eat anything because I'm running, not true. Not true. Diet trumps exercise. And manage your sleep. And I put this about sleep because I just heard a lecture from these wonderful doctors in Southern California about Alzheimer's prevention, and really you need to sleep. You need to sleep. It's not a time that nothing is happening. Lots of things are happening. It's like garbage trucks are going around your brain taking out shit. You really need to sleep. And I know because I'm an obstetrician, so I lost a lot of sleep. I used to say, I'll sleep when I'm dead, and I lost a lot of sleep. And I'm kind of nervous about that now. But now I try to sleep. So manage your stress and get restful sleep. Maintain a healthy weight, and don't smoke. Any questions? And please look at my website at newviewoffood.com, and if anyone wants to talk about health coaching and what health coaching can do for you, you can download my free ebook called Why Eat Plants, and some other blogs there. And just remember that we're all the same.
I have a lot of trouble getting a good night's sleep, and I read the usual things about the dark room and everything, but what, diet-wise, what things can you do to sleep better?
Well, I think avoiding all caffeine.
Yeah.
You don't have to do any caffeine?
No meth either.
What?
No meth either.
We can talk about it outside because I know they need the room. I'd be happy to talk to you more about it.
Okay, great.
It's definitely a problem for a lot of people.
Yeah. Thank you.
And I don't know why I made enough slides for everybody, but there were slides for everybody.